Welcome to the RotoWire NFL DFS show. I'm Adam Zdroik here, joined by Ryan Belongia. We're talking Week 11 in the NFL. This is the week before Feast Week. We got Thanksgiving coming up. Our bellies are gonna be full next week, but I'm fasting over the next 7 days, so I'm ready for Thanksgiving. Ryan, good morning. How are you on this Friday?
Oh yeah, I'm doing great. Fasting for Thanksgiving. Yeah, that's a good idea. I should start preparing too. No soccer this weekend. That's okay. We got NFL and Thanksgiving NFL coming up, and just a lot of games and a lot of sports, a lot of stuff to gamble on. But no soccer this week, so more focused on NFL. Hopefully that's good for the podcast.
A lot of money to win, a lot of money to lose. I always post some winning or losing single game parlays that I do for all these night games. I had last night everyone's favorite Keaton Mitchell. I think it was over 35 or 36 yards or something. He ended on 33. They're still giving the ball to Gus Bus in the fourth quarter, and then Justice Hill is getting carries. He was the final piece to my parlay, and that's so I'm taking those losings. And then we're gonna take that to winning this Sunday. How about that?
Yeah, I saw that. That's a tough beat there. I mean, how are they still handing it to Gus in the fourth quarter?
I mean, his nickname's Gus Bus, and he looks like a bus compared to when Keaton Mitchell gets the ball. It's kind of crazy. Okay, I understand that he's a goal line back, but just the fact that he's still getting the ball. I think on the last drive of the game, when there's a minute left, and the Browns are just going, or not the Browns, the Bengals are just calling timeouts, kind of thing. But we're talking We're talking.
Last night's showdown was very tilting. Mark Andrews got injured, Burrow got injured, Chase had 2 catches. I mean,
and then a late touchdown. Chase got the late touchdown from Jake Browning. So that was fun.
Both kickers ended up on the optimal lineup. I mean, just these showdowns have been really annoying, but we're going to bounce back this weekend.
That's disappointing to hear because I usually play both kickers, but I had a game last night, so I didn't get a DFS lineup in, but we'll move on to this 11 gamer here. So I think we have a lot of quarterbacks I think that you can play. I think is the first thing as we look at this slate. There's a lot of cheaper quarterbacks that you can play. I think in tournaments, probably not in cash games, Tua kind of stands out here, 7,700. It does seem like just a game where the Dolphins they've played well at home this season, and it seems like one of these games where it could be 30, 40 points for the Dolphins, where Tua goes off for a ton of points. I think that is one that you can look at for tournaments. But for cash games, are you kind of in the line of thinking of, okay, there's all these quarterbacks in the 6K to 5K range even that all seem pretty decent. I mean, Kyler Murray came back last week. He's only 6,100. Even Brock Purdy against the pass funnel Tampa Bay Bucks defense, he's 5,800. So there's a lot of guys that are cheaper to where you don't have to spend up at quarterback. And I mean, I didn't even mention Josh Allen, but he's playing against the Jets, and they fired Ken Dorsey and all that. I don't know why you'd play him in cash games or even tournaments for that matter. Sure, you could go for the huge range of points in tournaments, but are you thinking the same thing in terms of cash games? Just kind of spend down, and there's a lot of options that you can look at.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, and I agree. I can't, I'm gonna fade Allen probably in every format this week. You can make an argument because he has that ceiling for tournaments, but I think 2 guys below him. You mentioned one of them, Tua. The other one is Dak. I mean, we could talk about Herbert and Stroud, but Tua and Dak have just massive ceiling potential in these spots, and they're cheaper. For cash games, though, yeah, I think you're right. I think most people are going to live in that low 6K to high 5K range. I think Kyler will be one of the most popular for cash games. Makes sense. He looked pretty good last week. He was running around. He looked healthy. So, yeah, makes sense. I think Kyler and then Purdy at 5,800. I think maybe people might look at Lawrence at 6K. Howell is 63. So, I think those are the top 4 options. Maybe Goff 66. But I think this is a tough slate. I think because there's not a lot of clear-cut decisions really at any of the positions for cash games. Quarterback, like those 5 guys that I mentioned, I think people will be between. There might be one running back. Receiver, there's tough decisions and not like obvious value. I think tight end is kind of obvious. We'll get there later. Defense, there's no like cheap option that everyone's going to be on. So yeah, and then for tournaments, I think there's not really one game that stands out. Maybe Arizona, Houston, but I think there's like 6 or 7 games that you could credibly target for tournaments. So yeah, it's an interesting slate, and I think one of the tougher slates we've seen because there's just not a ton of obvious like cash game plays. There's tougher decisions.
Yeah, it seems like every position there's like a group of guys that look good and none of them stand out over the others. And that's kind of what we just talked about at quarterback. I mean, we'd even mentioned Stroud at 7K, Justin Fields expected to be back 6,900. They just gave up 38 points to the Chargers. The Lions did. So you figure that's going to be one of the games to stack, a high scoring game possibility. And we know Justin Fields, his running ability is always in play. And I mean, he's missed games with his thumb. So it's not like he's coming back from, an ankle or hamstring or something like that. It was his thumb. So his legs are good and he's fine to run. So there are, I guess if you find money when you're done building your lineup, if for some reason you're in that spot, I kind of did myself, but if maybe you start with like a 6K quarterback and then you have some extra money, I mean, maybe you get up to the Strouds, maybe you get up to, I don't know if you get up to Dak at 7,300, but
wow, you found some money left over.
I mean, it depends how crazy you want to get. Yeah, it depends how crazy you want to get. So I'll just say right now, I went double tight end. I went heavy with this Houston Arizona game. And I mean, you mentioned it. I think it's 48 and a half. It is the highest, just barely the highest over under on the slate, up there with Lions, Bears. It just seems like a game that's going to have points. I mean, neither one of these teams top 15 in defense, and we saw the Cardinals offense come alive a little bit with Kyler, and we just have all these cheap players from their team. The question, I think, once we get to wide receiver will be, the health of some of those Texans receivers kind of a thing. And once you get the running back, if you're going to want to play one of those running backs with all those wide receivers. So in terms of tournaments for quarterback, I mean, it's kind of the same situation. Do you like one more than the others? How much Tua are you going to have in your tournament lineups?
Well, yeah, I don't really like Allen. I do like Tua. The first 2 tournament lineups I made, were Tua and Dak. I think we got to talk about the Cowboys, and Dak first. I mean, their passing game has looked incredible the last 3 weeks. Dak's numbers are insane in the last 3 weeks. At least 31 fantasy points in every game, over 300 yards in every game, 11 touchdown passes in that span. He's run for a couple touchdowns in recent weeks. I made the mistake of playing Pollard over the passing game last week because I was worried about the blowout. The Cowboys kept their foot on the pedal. I mean, clearly they've realized that the passing game and CeeDee Lamb is what makes their offense best. It hasn't worked with Pollard. So yeah, I mean, I'm worried that Dak's going to put up another 35 or something. And so while I do like Tua, I like Dak as well. Like Tua has that same potential. Like I agree with you. Coming off a bye, they should, they're going to put up 40, or 30, I agree. The same thing you said. So it's tough. I think the Cowboys might be easier to stack. The Dolphins have 2 expensive receivers. Tyreek is the most expensive at 93 and then Waddle at 76. And I mean, if you do, you can fit both. Maybe you just play one, but also do you want to run it back with a Raider? I guess Josh Jacobs is only 6,800. I don't think you could afford to run it back with Devontae. Also, you don't need to run it back. These blowout stacks have been working. You wouldn't have ran it a Cowboys stack back with any Giants last week and works just fine. So I don't think you need to worry about that. So yeah, my two favorite spots are up top are Tua and Dak. I think you can make an argument for Herbert though too, just because he'll be low owned and it's a pretty good spot against the Packers. Yeah, going down Stroud. I think Stroud's interesting. I don't think people are going to be on Stroud. That game environment looks great. I agree with you about just stacking that whole game up. I'm considering doing that too. Fields against Detroit, that game too, 48 total. I mean, so we have all these spots. I'll just keep running through them. You could stack that Chicago-Detroit game. I mean, it's a great spot for Detroit, for Detroit's running game, and also for Amon-Ra. They should put up a ton of points there. I don't know what you're going to get with Fields back, but he should make the Bears more competitive. Could be a decent spot for him too. Komet is pretty cheap. DJ Moore. So yeah, you can stack that game up. I'm kind of done with the Seahawks, but you could play some pieces from that Seahawks-Rams game. I mean, it's one of the few games that's supposed to be competitive and also have some points. Cooper Kupp is cheap. The Seahawks receivers won't be owned, so I don't mind looking there. You could look at this Washington matchup, probably the best matchup in football right now against the Giants. We just saw what the Cowboys did. We know how much Sam Howell and Eric Bieniemy and them have been throwing. All their, pass catchers are cheap. Brian Robinson looks cheap. So, you could play some Washington pieces. Jacksonville then against this bad Tennessee team. Lawrence is cheap. That defense is still a pass funnel in Tennessee. So, you could play Lawrence with Kirk projects as one of the better values on the slate. Ridley's even cheaper now, and he will be less popular. Evan Ingram looks like one of the best tight ends on the slate. So, I mean,
are we just playing everyone?
No, but this is what I'm saying. That this slate is tough, but I also like these slates because you don't feel like you're forced into decisions. You kind of just pick what spots you think are the best, on other slate, at least for cash games, when certain guys are going to be so high owned.
I mean, Tommy DeVito's 5K, Kenny Pickett 4,800, Zach Wilson 4,800. There's a lot of studs.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going that low. Maybe
DTR,
you could go to
4,500. All right.
Yeah, I don't know about going that. Maybe you could go to Jordan Love at 56.
I mean, I wouldn't play him, but I think he is just because he's playing the Chargers there.
Right. He looked competent at least last week. I would say one of his better games. And it's a way to get some Chargers, if you want to play Eckler or Keenan or, we saw what the Pittsburgh running backs did to Green Bay last week. Both Jaylen Warren and Najee scored and had big games. So, it's a good spot for the Chargers too. I don't know. That's it's a tough slate. You can make an argument for all these spots.
Yeah, going back to your point on Prescott here, are you putting anything into, or have you thought about, because this game is in Carolina, or is that just not matter? I mean, you look at a lot of these numbers for the Panthers at home, and they just really aren't allowing a ton of yards at home. They've been better noticeably defensively. They had that game against the Texans where they actually beat the Texans. They only gave up 119 passing yards to CJ Stroud, and CJ Stroud, everyone's MVP candidate, rookie of the year candidate kind of thing. So are you putting anything into, okay, the Panthers are at home and it seems like they're playing better defense at home? Or is that just
not really, but I guess you could. No, I'm just I don't know. No, not really. I put more into just how good the Cowboys have been. I don't know who the Panthers play at home. Derek Carr, Gardner Minshew, Kirk Cousins,
CJ Stroud, Kirk Cousins,
and Stroud. Yeah, the Stroud. They've had some okay games there. I really worry because their offense and Bryce Young seems to have regressed. Maybe that's the wrong word, but they look bad in recent weeks, and I just can't see them keeping the Cowboys off the field.
Yeah.
But maybe, that could happen.
I think the last time we talked, Frank Reich gave up play calling duties, and now Frank Reich took back play calling duties. Again, this isn't going to mean a ton here for DFS, but just a funny.
It's basically just like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so that's quarterback. I mean, we kind of mentioned it's kind of the same for all of these positions as well. As we get into running back, we have McCaffrey at 9,300, Eckler's 8,600. Very expensive when you consider the prices and if you're going to pay up for a wide receiver, because there are some wide receivers that have been on some great form recently. So probably not going to spend up on the McCaffreys and Ecklers. So what are we going to do? You mentioned before the show Devin Singletary 5,300. If Dameon Pierce is out, he's probably going to be a lock. But what else do we have here? Jahmyr Gibbs is 7K. Again, it's similar where it's not a ton that stands out. We're not going to play Tony Pollard at this point. Do we play Rico Dowdell at this point? Travis Etienne is 7,200. Does anyone outside of, I guess, Singletary, if Pierce is out, is anyone actually just a must play or it?
No. So it kind of makes me want to get up to McCaffrey. I think you could get up to McCaffrey and still play Tyreek Hill or one of those expensive receivers. I kind of like getting up to McCaffrey when there's no other obvious running backs. I don't think it's a must, but
in cash games here?
Yeah, I think you could in cash games.
Okay.
I think Singletary would be a lock. Yeah, he would be the most popular if Pierce is out. So Singletary ran all over the Bengals last week, 30 carries for 150 yards and a touchdown. This would be one of the best matchups he could have. The Cardinals' defensive line is ranked last in the league. So it's a pretty good spot for the Texans running game. So yeah, Singletary would be a lock at 53. And then who do you put in next? You mentioned Gibbs. I think Gibbs is an option. He's crushed the last 3 weeks, and it's a great spot at home against the Bears. So I would look at Gibbs. You're right. I can't go back to Pollard. I get it. One of these times, maybe he does it, but there's no way I'm trusting that in cash. I think Aaron Jones, you could play at 6,200. I would just kind of ignore that questionable tag unless you hear something else. His health has been trending in the right direction. He's got 41 touches over the last 2 games, 8 catches, good spot at home against the Chargers. So I would consider Aaron Jones. I think some people might consider Etienne. At least I see he might be relatively popular, but I prefer Gibbs. I get it with Etienne against a bad Titans team, but yeah, it's not obvious. I don't know. Going a little bit cheaper, James Conner is there for 5,700. Came back last week and got all the work after his injury. Just a good game environment there. But yeah, there would really be nothing obvious after Singletary. So that's why I could see getting up to McCaffrey or Eckler, I guess. But I would just try to get up to McCaffrey if that was the case.
Yeah, it's just that 9,300 is a lot when you have a guy like Gibbs who is 7K,
right,
2,300 cheaper. He's put up, as good of similar performances as McCaffrey in recent weeks, and then David Montgomery came out and said he basically gave up a goal line opportunity, gave it to Gibbs in the last game. So, that's another plus. So. Just getting to that 9,300 is a lot, I think. And then you have this Bucs run defense, which is considered, one of the best in the league, and they just get passed on pretty much by everyone. As I'm pulling up some of the rush defense numbers, okay, I guess they have allowed a couple big games. They got ran through by the Eagles, and I think James Cook actually had a good game against them a couple weeks ago. So maybe that happens.
No, you're right though. Normally Tampa Bay has one of the better run defenses in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Obviously with McCaffrey, sometimes that just means he's going to catch more balls. I don't know. He's got, it almost doesn't matter the matchup. But I hear you.
Any thoughts to the Rams running back between Henderson and Freeman?
Yeah.
It seems just like a straight up split here.
Yeah.
By all accounts.
I'm not going to do it. It seems like they trust Henderson more. And I think Henderson has a little bit more upside as a receiver. So I'd go with Henderson if I was going to target a back there, but I wasn't really planning on any Rams backs.
Yeah, I guess in that same range, it's just basically the split territory where you have Jerome Ford, Kareem Hunt down here. You mentioned Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris are down here. Ford isn't too bad, I don't think. I mean, this isn't the worst matchup. You got to figure this is going to be a pretty close game, maybe low scoring, where there will be opportunities for Ford to get carries, kind of a thing. But I mean, he's only 5,200. He had a pretty good game against the Steelers. I think it was week 2. I guess Rico is down here as well. If you think Mike McCarthy's comments are going to come to fruition about him getting more touches going forward. So there are other options here if you want to spend up more at wide receiver, basically.
Ford, he seems okay. I have a tough time rostering anyone anyone on Cleveland with DTR starting. I don't know though. I guess you could make the argument that it could be better for Ford, but not if the Steelers just key on the run game more, because they're not worried about DTR beating them through the air. I should mention 8chan, right? 6,600. Apparently he's good to go and going to play, but it's the same situation as always.
That's a pure tournament move right there.
Right. Yeah. Just a pure tournament move, but
he's getting 10 touches. I doubt he's going to get that much more than 10 touches. So you're just hoping for the 50-yard carry, the 50-yard reception kind of a thing. So
which, we've seen twice already from him.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. Strictly a tournament move. I don't know. Running back's tough. Yeah, I think Gibbs looks like a pretty good option for a second running back. I think Aaron Jones too. I don't know.
Anything into I know the numbers really aren't there, but Saquon Barkley, they're going to be running the ball a bunch. 7,100. He's going to get touches. Washington gave away their 2 best defensive linemen.
Yeah, that's an interesting tournament move. I don't think he'll be very popular.
Yeah, I'm just looking at percentages. Like he's a little bit down the list. But I mean, it's 7,100. I think it's just it's a good route. I mean, last time these teams played, it was 14-7. It's not going to be a blowout. I doubt it's going to be a blowout, I guess, for either side. So you got to think
that's a pretty good call, actually. He's all the way down to 7,100. I hadn't even really considered that, but yeah, big salary drop, and it should be a pretty good matchup. I mean, we've been trying to target this Washington team. On the other side, I guess I didn't mention, I like Brian Robinson. He's only 5,800. Gibbs hasn't practiced yet. I assume he's probably okay and will play. Like, if he doesn't, it'd just be a great spot for Robinson. I know that
Gibson.
Sorry, Antonio Gibson. Yeah.
So if Gibson misses out, I mean, Brian Robinson had 6 targets last game, 6 catches as well. He just gets all that receiving work, basically?
I would think he'll get at least some of it. Yeah, look at Robinson last week, 6 catches for 119 and a touchdown. I mean, that 51-yard touchdown was on sort of like a busted play, and Robinson was like the last option, but yeah, it worked out. Clearly, he had 5 targets, other than that, if Gibson was out, I'll play Robinson in cash for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, just probably in range of 20 touches, a few targets for 5,800 against the Giants.
Right. He's one of those that, okay, he's not projecting very well. I think part of the reason is because the Commanders statistically have the worst offensive line in the league, I believe. And the Giants, if they've done one thing decent, it's like been stopping the run sometimes. So like from a matchup perspective, it doesn't jump off the page, but what does jump off the page is the Giants starting to veto and having a team total of like 13 or
Right.
whatever. So, and Robinson is under 6K. So to me, I sort of just disregard matchup.
They've given up at least 80 rushing yards in all but 2 games.
The Giants which is it's tough when you're always on the field and your offense isn't scoring, right? And teams are just running out the game in the second half. So
it's tough when you have 10 3 and outs per game.
Right. So it's probably not even that bad. They could be getting crushed for 200 yards on the ground in some of these games.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it for running back. We've kind of touched on pretty much everything.
Yeah, here. Like play whoever you think is in, it's Singletary will be like massive chalk if Pierce is out. And then after that, it's up for debate.
I'll actually ask, so this James Cook situation, no more Ken Dorsey. We saw the last game for the Bills where their best route of attack, it seemed like just running the ball. And Cook had over 100 yards in that game. Every game, Josh Allen is seemingly having dumb turnovers. Do they take, I mean, we can't obviously, project what's going on here, but maybe in tournaments, maybe the Bills just take more of a running approach than we've seen previously, because that did work in their last game. Maybe they kind of take that approach here against the Jets a little bit, or is that maybe not?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that you said. Normally I don't like to play guys against the Jets. They have a really good defense and they're involved in a lot of lower scoring games. But yeah, I like Cook. I like Cook as a player, and he's really cheap. Upside catching passes too. Even Breece Hall on the other side is pretty cheap.
Yeah, I was going to say
the same kind of thing. I think I should have mentioned Hall. I think Hall's a decent option too. But yeah, with Cook, I think that's fine. I would just make sure that they don't activate Leonard Fournette yet. Like, I wouldn't want to. If you feel like they signed him and they have Latavius Murray, who also had a good game, and I just would worry about Cook's touches when all 3 of those backs are active. But yeah,
they sign these running backs for some reason. Maybe it's for the second half of the season with someone else calling offensive plays, kind of a thing.
Yeah, and you figure for the playoff run, it's going to be cold, especially in Buffalo. Like
playoff run,
playoff Lenny, yeah, right. Bills are missing the playoffs currently.
Yeah,
sorry.
right. I mean, they're favored to not make the playoffs.
Yeah, I still think they will, but
yeah. All right, before we get to a wide receiver, get ready for the ultimate big game parties at Circa Resort and Casino. Super Sunday is in Las Vegas this year. Watch the big game poolside at Stadium Swim's big game viewing party. Massive screen, booming game sound, and a view of the pyrotechnic and visual effects throughout the game. Snag the best seat in the sun with day beds, poolside boxes, cabanas, and more. Or touchdown at the world's largest sports book, Circa Sports, for the big game bash. 3 stories of football glory, featuring a 78 million pixel screen. Book your seat with a variety of reservation options, including bottle service, open bar, stadium-style food, and more. Don't miss these legendary viewing experiences on February 11th. The big game party's only at Circa Resort and Casino. Reserve today at circalasvegas.com. 3 stories of football glory, Ryan. You're moving into a new house. You got 3 stories of football glory at your house?
No. I don't.
That's a
unfortunately.
bummer. That's a
Although
bummer.
I technically I could, because the house
The
is a
attic.
tri-level. The house is
Okay.
a tri-level. So we could have 3 stories of football glory, but currently
Technical three
no.
stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
Set it up. Set it up. So yeah, set it up for the big Thanksgiving feast week slate there. So we got wide receiver here. There's I'm just counting all the options here. There's 5 receivers at 8,800 and more, and they're all between 8,800 and 9,300, which I don't really remember seeing this quite often like this so close together. So Tyreek Hill, we mentioned the Dolphins in a pretty good smash spot here against the Raiders. CeeDee Lamb, correlated with Dak Prescott, has been unbelievable in the last few weeks. Diggs, where I think we're probably gonna be on the same page as, okay, if we're not playing Josh Allen, why are we looking at Diggs? Keenan Allen is just getting 50 targets a game, but AC joint sprain. I think he's fine. I saw somewhere that Keenan Allen has basically had a busted shoulder since his rookie year or something, and obviously he's been Keenan Allen for the past 10 plus years, so I'm not sure how big of a worry that is. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, 8,800. So you have all these guys in here, and this isn't even getting to the Cooper Kupps at 8,100. Even the Puka Nacua is at 7,100. Devontae against the Dolphins. If you want to take the Raiders route, I'm not sure we'll go there, but there are a lot of options here. Does one of these high-end wide receivers stand out more than the rest? I'm going to guess you're going to say CeeDee Lamb based on your Dak comments, but what do you think?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think there's much I can really tell. I don't think there's much anybody can really tell anybody about these receivers. You so yeah, Tyreek and CeeDee Lamb, they're the top 2. As far as choosing between them, yeah, I don't know how you do it. So CeeDee Lamb, he set an NFL record last week. Only guy with 3 straight games of at least 11 catches and 150 receiving yards. Crazy numbers for CD. He's looked great. Tyreek is the same. We see he's got a massive ceiling every week. I think these 2 guys have the highest ceilings on the slate and are most likely to hit them. But then you go down, and Keenan Allen he's coming off another 40-point game. He's going to be less popular than these guys. They don't have Mike Williams. Quentin Johnson hasn't done it. They don't have Josh Palmer anymore. So, they got to rely on Keenan. He's a decent leverage play for tournaments. I agree with you on Diggs, but the fact that no one's really going to play him makes him at least somewhat interesting. I remember, people were talking about fading him, and I faded him in the first matchup against the Jets in New York based on the up against Sauce Gardner narrative. And they made a point to target Diggs, and he torched Gardner and the Jets. 10 catches, 102 yards for a touchdown in New York. So I think that's an interesting leverage option. I'm not going to do it, but from a game theory point of view, it makes sense. And then Amon-Ra, great spot, cheaper than these other guys. Maybe not quite the ceiling they have, but you could see him scoring in the mid 30s.
I mean, if you just throw one more touchdown in there, I think the ceiling is there. If you just look at
yeah,
the
I do
targets and
too.
yards.
I do too. And then Kupp is cheaper now, coming off a bye. 3 straight games under 7 fantasy points. I think you can throw out the game with Rippin.
Yeah, I mean, he came in the Dallas game as well. So
yeah, you can kind of throw out some of that stuff. But yeah, it's nice that Kupp is 1,000 cheaper than these other guys. So I guess, what I'm saying is they're all viable options, and you can make an argument for all of them. It's like the theme
right.
of this slate. But yeah, my favorite 2 are Tyreek and CeeDee Lamb. But, I feel like most people will probably actually no. I think the most popular are going to be Tyreek, Amon-Ra, and Cup. So like I kind of like CD if he's going to maybe be the fourth most popular out of those guys. I don't know. Who's your favorite here?
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube or Twitter, I have some rostership percentage projections up, and it's kind of what you said. It just seems like even though CeeDee Lamb has been awesome, it I don't know. There's like a sentiment around him that he isn't awesome.
Right, or at least
mean,
that he shouldn't be priced the same as like Tyreek. Yeah,
right.
there is.
Tyreek has the name. He has the name of Cheetah, home against the Raiders, Cooper Cup, his history. So you're throwing all of that in there. I think that kind of leads to maybe more people looking at Tyreek and then a cheaper Cooper Cup. I think that has to go into account there. But I almost think like, why go Cup when Puka is 7,100? The last time that Stafford played and Puka and Cup were healthy, it was that Steelers game where Puka was the guy who went off a little bit. I mean, maybe it doesn't happen, and Coop just is back to what he was last year, 2 years ago, kind of thing, or maybe it is more of a split role, and Puka is up there as well. So, I mean, if you need to save the $1,000 on Puka, like I don't think it's going to be that's much worse of a situation for you.
No, yeah, I think that's a good call too. Puka, he's cheaper than he's been in 6 weeks. I mean, he had gotten up to 8K. So yeah, now back down to 71 is interesting. And it's the opposite with CD. He was 7,100 a few weeks ago, 7,300. Then he just got up to the 8Ks. I mean, he's never been over 9K. So yeah, all the way up to 9,200. Should keep some people off. CeeDee Lamb. I agree though. Yep. Down again. Puka's a good option.
Yeah, I mean
Waddle.
the games with Rippin are going into the prices, I think, a little bit here, which I don't think
Yeah.
they should, but that's just how
Right.
it goes.
I think Waddle's an interesting tournament option, just as leverage off Tyreek. Waddle has said he's healthier than he's been all season, so I think he's got a ceiling game in him. Going down, yeah, I see on our percentages and other percentages, Marquise Brown projects the best in the 5K range. He projected the best in that range last week too, and caught one pass on 4 targets. So I think people are going to be
let's talk about that game a little bit.
yeah.
So yeah, just all the wide receivers for this game, because I think, well, I went Kyler Murray here. That we'll probably have some Kyler Stroud lineups, kind of a thing, some stacks. So we know we'll get to tight ends, I guess. So we'll just talk about. We can bring in McBride and Schultz here if we want to, just as we're talking about this game. So Nico Collins, we'll see about his calf. He did not play last week, so that led to some big performances for Noah Brown, who also happened to pop up on the injury report. And I haven't seen anything yet from today, but he didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. So we have a situation where we don't know right now, as of Friday morning, of who is actually going to be the starting wide receivers for Houston. Tank Dell seems like the one healthy guy. He's 5,900. Getting to the Cardinals, you mentioned Brown is 5,300, but Rondale Moore had, I think, the most targets of the wide receivers in Kyler's first start. He had 8 targets in that game. He's more of a gadget guy. He's going to get catches behind the line of scrimmage kind of thing, but he will get targets, and he's only 3,300. And then Michael Wilson, maybe, he had a few good games early in the season, but he's 3,400, had 6 targets in the last game. So, yeah, so I guess I'll shoot it over to you on your thoughts of how to deal with this game here.
I wrote in my article that one of the reasons this game was the most attractive for stacks is because there's at least 5 players on each team that you could credibly roster, that are very viable. For the Texans wide receivers, yeah, I heard Nico Collins said he's good to go, said he's going to play. So yeah, Nico is good to go. You mentioned, you would like Noah Brown to be out. He hasn't practiced yet, but that would be Yeah, that I would want him to be out because or else they're
Plug in
rotating.
Nico and Tank.
Yeah, or even Robert Woods is 3,700.
Your guy.
I think that I remember bringing him up on another podcast
Yeah.
with you, and he scored a touchdown. He
On one catch.
was that the
I'm looking
one?
at
No,
I'm looking at his
oh
stats.
no, he didn't. That wasn't the podcast. It was one of these other games. He didn't score a touchdown. Anyways, but if Brown didn't play, I don't know. Like Woods has 3 games with 9+ targets already. He's just coming back from injury, but finally doesn't have a questionable tag. For me, it wouldn't be the worst if Noah Brown was out, especially when you consider there's not like much in this 3K range. That's a perfect segue to the Arizona side because Rondale Moore projects the best in the 3K range, which makes sense. I think Moore is a viable cash game play, even after 8 targets. I'm considering him in cash games. That's how you can spend up at running back and spend up for, or you don't have to spend up at running back. You can spend up for 2 receivers if you play Rondale. Yeah, and I think just for these Cardinals guys, they would not be priced so cheap if Kyler had been playing this season. They're priced the way they are because Clayton Tune was playing the last few games and Dobbs before that. So yeah, that's why the Cardinals all project as good value. Trey McBride stands out again. We mentioned Marquise already. Michael Wilson for tournaments if you want more in any format. Yeah, like every player in that game is viable, which makes it attractive for stacks.
Yeah, just overall, it feels like, for me personally, this just feels like a 34-31 type of game. I think it kind of relies on what we're going to get out of Kyler. I mean, I guess that's kind of been the case for Kyler Murray's career. Are you going to get a good Kyler where he actually is staying competitive, or is he going to be, he's too short and he can't, I don't know, he can't get out of the pocket kind of thing and can't complete passes? I mean, that is the one thing where it's like, okay, maybe the Texans just dominate. But I think, if Kyler shows up like he did against the Falcons last week, this is a game where both teams can score. And we saw this a couple weeks ago. The Texans were at home. They played the Bucs. That game ended 39-37. Even last week against the Bengals, 30-27 for the Texans. So you have just the history of these games, and it just seems like the game on the slate that has the possibility for both teams hitting 30 points.
Yep.
We didn't even mention here. So let's just sum up this conversation. We have Dalton Schultz at 5K at tight end and Trey McBride at 4,400. I think at the beginning of the show, you're like, there's an obvious tight end. Is Trey McBride the obvious tight end? But what about Schultz here at 5K? Would you actually consider Schultz? Would you consider playing both of them, like one in your flex?
Yeah. All great questions. I like Schultz too. McBride is, to me, the play for cash games. Either him, some might say Evan Ingram. They're the same price, and I understand it with Evan Ingram too. So I would say them for cash games. Schultz, I think, is a great tournament play because he's going to be way less popular than those guys. I think people are going to kind of live in that mid 4K range for tight end. Even Cole Kmet a little cheaper. Some might even get up to Kincaid. But yeah, I really like Schultz, especially. Yeah, no, I really like Schultz in general. He's been great this season. I think he has touchdown in 4 of the last 5 or something like that.
Yeah. I think we talked after that
too.
Bucs game because I played him in the Bucs game. I just picked. I think I had Nico Collins. I had the wrong Texan receiver in that Bucs game. But
and I think double tight end is okay. I did it last week on a few lineups.
Would you be more likely to do that if, say, Noah Brown is out?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I'm not sure it necessarily matters, but it would help. But it can't hurt, right? It can't hurt Schultz to have one of the receivers out. Stroud and you broke it down perfectly. If Kyler can keep pace, we could get a shootout in that spot. I was worried that we might see a letdown from Stroud and the Texans after, he threw for 470 in that massive game against Tampa. Then going into Cincy, who were on a roll as, Texans as pretty big underdogs. Crazy stat from that game. Stroud had 17 completions of at least 15 yards. 17 completions of at least 15 yards. That's more than any quarterback has had in a game this season. I mean, that's very impressive stuff. So, yeah, I like stacking that game.
It's funny you say the Bengals are on a roll because we're talking Friday now, and they are not on a roll anymore. Joe Burrow
things
is in
changed
trouble.
very quickly.
Yeah, after Thursday's game. But so I'm just going through the list of wide receivers. So we talked about this Houston-Arizona game. We talked about the high-end options. Who stands out in terms of these other teams, in terms of everyone else? I'm not sure there's – I guess it's like, okay, these guys are going to be pretty popular because I don't know if anything else stands out really when you get to
right.
I don't know, Debo Samuel. I guess is 6,300. He's pretty cheap now, and if he another week and maybe he's a little healthier. So what are we looking at? Sub Debo at 6,300 kind of a thing?
Yeah. No, I agree with you though. To me, it makes sort of stars and scrubs look more attractive. Like the best option in the 5K range we said is Marquise Brown. Now, I think that's fine, but it's tough when Trey McBride and Rondale Moore look like better options on the same team. I'm talking for cash games. Like it's tough to choose Marquise Brown over them in my opinion. And yeah, so a little higher than that. I think Christian Kirk will probably be the most popular in the 6K range, but not like overwhelmingly so. There's not much from a cash game perspective, but the matchup for the Jaguars is really good, and specifically the Jaguars passing game. Kirk, has established himself as the number one, and this should be a little bit of a bounce back spot for the Jags after getting crushed last week against San Fran. So, if you want to go that more mid-range route, I think Kirk's fine. Marquise Brown is fine, but yeah, like no really smash spots or obvious spots. It makes me want to just punt Rondale, spend up for two receivers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rondale over Wilson is your.
Yeah, I think there's plenty. You can consider plenty of these other guys in tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
Especially go ahead.
I was gonna say Jaden Reed is down here.
Yeah,
4K.
Jaden Reed, I included him in my article. Same with Watson, for 4,600. I think a lot of guys in that range are good tournament plays. Quentin Johnston, even against Green Bay, is coming off his best game of the season and his first touchdown. I think you can do it for 4,200, especially with Keenan banged up,
Brandon
all the
Cooks.
injuries they have. I'm just throwing it Jackson Smith and Jigba for the same price. Brandon Cooks. Cooks had a massive game last week. 9 catches, 173 yards, and a touchdown. He actually has a touchdown in 3 of his last 4. With that passing game just clicking so well, I don't mind Brandon Cooks in tournaments, especially like on Dak double stacks.
For tournaments,
sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. I just want to bring it back to you, Kirk, a little bit, and just for the Jags, it just seems like when they do have the big games, that Etienne is the guy that kind of goes off. I just look back at Lawrence's numbers; he's only had more than 300 passing yards in one game, so it just feels like okay, if you want to stack Lawrence and Kirk or something in tournaments, it just doesn't feel like that's the best strategy. Is kind of what.
So what? You don't think he'll ever throw?
But...
You don't think he'll ever throw for 300 again?
I mean, he will, but okay. So 6K for Kirk, and then Lawrence is 6K as well.
Evan Ingram.
I mean, okay,
it's just maybe it's just a cheap double stack.
They're just a little cheaper, I guess. Is
right. I agree with you, though. Yeah, it's been tough sledding for Lawrence. People expected him to have a much better year than he's having, especially from a statistical standpoint. I think he's really let down. People will see this though as people always like to play the passing stacks against the Titans, always. So I think that's part of it. It hasn't quite been the case as much this year because their run defense hasn't been quite as good as in previous seasons. And yeah, it's tough with Will Levis as your quarterback too. But yeah, no, I don't think I'm going to be on the Jags, but it makes sense.
Anything else for wide receiver?
Yeah, the Reds, the Commanders.
Whoa!
Sorry about that. The Commanders.
Jahan Dotson. What happened to him last week? He's 5,100. He did not have a catch last week. And they scored 26 points.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what happened. Brian Robinson went off. I don't know. But just in general, it's a great spot against the Giants. You know, we say it every week how often the Commanders are throwing the ball. Dak just did whatever he wanted to against this defense through the air. So McLaurin, you know, I know McLaurin's been very disappointing with when you consider how much they've been throwing it. You know, they just have a lot of guys and they kind of interchange them. McLaurin, Dotson, Logan Thomas, Curtis Samuel, I believe is going to play. He's listed as questionable. But
are you worried that the last time they played it was 14-7 in a really ugly game?
Not really. But no, I don't know. Should I be?
I don't know. It worries me a little bit. It just seems when these teams play, it is ugly. And are the Commanders going to win 28-10 or something? Maybe, but I don't know. It just feels like a matchup where when these teams play every year that there aren't a ton of blowouts. I mean, I'm not speaking from statistics here, but.
Right. I just think it might be a different story with Danny DeVito under center.
Oh, you're saying the Giants are going to get 30?
No, I'm saying the Commanders are going to have more opportunities than usual. But yeah, it's not a spot I'm in love with, but you got to throw it out there. It's the best matchup Washington's going to have, at least one of the best matchups Washington's going to have at home against arguably the worst team in football. You know, they got to be under consideration.
Yeah, it just seems like Washington just isn't a team that is going to get blowouts. So that's kind of what I'm thinking there. So we talked about tight ends a little bit. Do you want to add anything else to the McBride Schultz conversation? I know you mentioned a few other guys. I mean, is there a reason we don't have to talk about Kelsey here, but Kittle is 6,400, Laporta is 5,800, Kincaid 4,900. You mentioned Ingram 43, Kmet 41. So there's all these options, but Trey McBride seems like the targets are going to be there. Seems like a high scoring game. He's 4,400. How many of your lineups are going to have McBride / Schultz in them?
A lot. So I really like Trey McBride. I think most people know this. I've been talking about him for a while. I have a bunch of him in best ball, and you know, there's sort of been two different camps on this, and I get it because he's been chalky a few weeks now. So of course you can make an argument to fade that. I've been on the other end where I didn't make a lineup without McBride last week and it worked out just fine. He was 3,500 then though, and now he's up to 44, but
I still think it's pretty cheap.
I'm going to steal, I'm not going to, there's a clip of Evan Silva going around where he's talking about McBride is the Cardinals version of Travis Kelce. And it sounds funny, but he is. McBride is a stud tight end, won awards in college. He's big, he's fast, he's athletic. I mean, you look at him out there and he looks the part.
He's also 10 years younger. I think we have to mention that.
Right. I mean, so I'm sort of a McBride guy. So yeah, I'm going to play McBride, but I do like these other tight ends. I like Schultz for sure. I think Ingram's a decent play. I think Jake Ferguson's a decent play. Ferguson has a touchdown in 3 straight games, and I just like the Cowboys. I think Kincaid is even a pretty good play. He's been crushing lately. Yeah, I'm going to live in that range, and I think you can go double tight end again. I'm definitely considering double tight end, especially sort of with the lack of guys I'm in love with at wide receiver in that range, and cheap running backs as well. Sorry, I was just looking. I was just looking at something. We were talking about the Commanders Giants game. Like, do you think, the
Logan
Raiders?
Thomas?
No. I just
Okay.
can the Giants blow them out? I mean, can the Raiders blow anybody out? The Raiders have scored. The Raiders, 30-6 against the Giants 2 weeks ago. The Raiders haven't scored over 20 points in any other game this season.
Whoa. That's a new coach bump. You can't throw that in there.
Okay, new coach bump. Yeah.
Antonio Pierce bump. Come on.
Yeah, there was
they
some
drinking?
of that,
They're drinking champagne in the locker room after that game,
smoking
or something?
cigars, everything. That was a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, though, yeah, back to tight end. I mean, do you agree? I think double tight end looks decent again.
Yeah, that was my first move, especially with the Arizona Houston stack.
Yep.
It just seems to make sense when we have that range of wide receivers from the 7K ish to 5K ish to even 4K. Like, I mean, we'd rather play a lot of these tight ends here than, I don't know, a lot of the 6K wide receivers to an extent here. Some of them, at least. Some of them, I'll say.
Sorry, I was just looking at a question in this chat, the Rondale Moore question.
I'm not sure what's going on with here, but yeah, go.
Yeah, for it. I just no, you can't play. I wouldn't, like, in a season long type fantasy. No, I would not play Rondale Moore over those guys, just because those other guys have more upside. But when salary is a
Who's
consideration,
the fraud? I don't know what this guy's talking about. The fraud is gone.
Maybe someone.
The Raiders.
The Raiders.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But
just okay. No to Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore in DFS, not Rondale Moore over those guys in season-long fantasy.
Yeah, you play Addison right there.
Yeah, maybe even Ridley. I don't know. I haven't looked at I don't even know who. I don't even know who Minnesota plays this week. Sorry.
He's confirming we are not the frauds. Okay. Thanks for confirming that, Daniel. All right. So actually, before we get to defenses and some winning tournament strategies, RotoWire is proud to partner with Splash Sports for the 2023 fantasy football season. Splash Sports empowers gaming commissioners to earn by creating contests. Commissioners can set up contests, add their style, and enjoy the evolving Splash Sports platform for customized preferences. From daily to season-long contests, Splash Sports caters to various playing styles such as DFS, Pick X, and traditional Survivor. And unlike traditional sports books, Splash Sports pits you against friends and family, not the house. Splash goes beyond betting, a space where friends can connect, strategize, and share in the excitement of sports. RotoWire will be running weekly DFS tiers contests on Splash Sports all season. Can you beat the RotoWire experts? Visit rotowire.com/splash to enter today. There's a RotoWire Survivor contest, and I think there's about 5 people left in it on Splash Sports. I am up. I am still alive here, so we're entering week 11. So I don't know what the payout is, but I'm just saying.
Still alive in Survivor?
Yeah, I'm amazing at Survivor. So if you need any tips,
that's
just
saying
me.
A lot this year. That's very nice.
I mean, you could say that every year. There's people always say in the NFL, it's like, oh, there's so many upsets this year in the NFL, but it's, the same thing happens every year.
Yeah.
There's random games here and there where a bad team's going to beat a good team. It's, the same thing year over year, but it's just recency bias is kind of what it is.
Okay. I feel like there's been some high profile ones of the chalkiest Survivor team of a few weeks, but yeah, I hear you. Sorry, before we get into defense, I'll just finish off tight end, because there's some cheap ones. We sort of stopped at the 4K range because that's where I think the best options are, but let's go all the way down to 2,500.
Pat,
You got to mention Pat. You got to mention Pat Freiermuth coming back at 2,500. Apparently, he's healthy now. Not the greatest matchup against Cleveland, but with Cleveland starting DTR, I think you got to give it a little bump. And then also for 2,500, it looks like Hayden Hurst is going to miss with a concussion, which is actually kind of significant because Tommy Tremble is 2,500, and he's a guy who he has some receiving chops, and he'd already been playing more before. He's got at least 2 catches in 4 straight games, and his snap share had already been going up. So if Hayden Hurst was out, and he would have a path to being the clear number 1. At least I bring it up because it was interesting for me, because if I'm going to have some Dallas stacks, I was trying to look at what I can maybe do with Carolina. You don't need any Panthers, but I wouldn't mind having one. Also, I think I should switch back to receiver. Could bring up Mingo and Chark too, 3,400, 3,300. They're the same price as those 2 Arizona guys who will be chalky. I think it's good in tournaments to maybe fade that Rondale Moore chalk and look for some of these other guys in the 3K range. But yeah, I just wanted to mention those 2 $2,500 tight ends. And then there's a couple in the 3K range if you want to take chances on. You mentioned Logan Thomas. He seems fine. Musgrave for 3,600 seems fine. Chigakonkwo, if you want, for 3,200. He's been getting targets recently. I don't know. Just wanted to mention a few other guys. I'll probably just stay in that 4K range. Maybe I could play Tommy Tremble in a Dallas stack if Hayden Hurst was out. But
double T.
Yeah.
Double T. For defenses, Cowboys are at 4,100. Are you spending up? Do you have the money to spend up? Or who is the cheap defense you would be looking at? I initially plugged in Jets at 2,600 against the Bills.
Yeah, this week is interesting because there's not a defense under 3K that I think is going to be popular. And most of the time, people want to play like the cheapest viable defense in cash games. You mentioned the Jets for 2,600 at Buffalo. Yeah, that seems okay. Maybe I'll do that. Could you go all the way down to the Packers at 2,300 against Justin Herbert? Maybe. Yeah, what do I think people are going to do? I think Commanders are going to be relatively popular, which is just, it's so interesting because, the last 2 weeks, everybody's been talking about, they just traded Chase Young and Montez Sweat, and this defense is just awful. But I mean,
they got 0 sacks against the Patriots. I'm not going to play them.
Okay, if you're going by the numbers, they're up against a team. What is the Giants' total right now? I haven't checked today, but I think it's 13 or something. So they're going to be. Look, it's a home matchup against Danny DeVito or whatever his name is, Tommy DeVito.
Danny DeVito.
So, it might as well be Danny DeVito. I don't think I'm going to do it either, Adam, but I understand why they project to be relatively popular. I think people will consider the Jaguars as well at home against the Titans. That looks like a pretty good spot. I think people will consider the Dolphins at home against the Raiders. That looks like a pretty good spot. So yeah, I guess those 3, at least from what I'm seeing, project to be the most popular. So yeah, that's $3,600 Washington, $3,400 Jacksonville, and $3,200 Miami. Seems like those are going to be the 3 most popular, but people always like to spend down. So I don't know. Defense is going to be spread around this week.
Yeah, if I spend up, I want to know I'm gonna get a few sacks, and the team has shown the ability to get pick sixes and force turnovers kind of thing. Because when you spend up, you need the upside, you need the touchdown upside kind of thing. I mean, it's fine. Okay, maybe the Commanders only allow 10 points, but if they're allowed 10 points and have 1 or 2 sacks, 1 interception, I don't think it's going to be enough.
Yeah,
you need a touchdown. And
I'm with you.
Yeah, 3,600. I mean, we talked about the tight ends. We talked about the Cardinals. I mean, I guess price equivalence doesn't matter here, but I just think when you spend up comparing the Jets, the Packers, whoever for 1K cheaper, like you need something else. And for a Commanders team who has 1 sack since they let go, or they Chase Young and Montez Sweat, since those guys have been gone, they have 1 sack. One of those games against the Patriots, who, okay, we've seen
Yeah.
what the Patriots did last week in their game with Mac Jones. So I'm not, even though Danny DeVito is in there, I'm not sure what exactly that means for this Washington defense.
No, yeah, that's a good point. I paid 4,400 for the Cowboys against DeVito last week, and they did
They
not
had
do it.
5 sacks and no
5
touchdowns,
sacks
right?
and still only 8 fantasy points. You're right,
Mm-hmm.
though. I'd rather, for $100 cheaper, I'd rather play the Steelers against DTR. Play TJ Watt against DTR. Play Jaguars against Levis. Play Dolphins against Aiden O'Connell. Yeah, those all seem like higher upside spots to me.
Yeah, even the Chargers against the Packers, we know Jordan
Yeah.
Love is prone to turnovers. As we wind up defense here, and I guess go to any last thoughts for tournaments. I mean, we've kind of talked a lot about the Texans Cardinals game. I think we covered that one pretty well. And I mean, we talked a little bit about everything. What would you say the Texans Cardinals stack would be more popular just because it's a little easier to fit than a Bears Lions stack of a game kind of a thing? Uh,
Yeah.
Someone mentioned in our chat DJ Moore relevance again now that Justin Fields is back. So maybe you have either Fields and DJ Moore, or you have St. Brown and Goff with DJ Moore kind of a thing. I mean, obviously, according to the over under, that is the other game that seems likely to have maybe both teams hit 30 points kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I think it'll be much less popular. So I think it's much less popular than the Arizona-Houston matchup. So it's a very good target for tournaments. The Arizona-Houston matchup is going to be the chalkiest, unfortunately, because Trey McBride is chalk. Rondale Moore is relatively popular. Singletary will be massive chalk. If Pierce is out, Kyler Murray will be one of the more popular quarterbacks. So when you have all those guys expected to be chalky, yeah, it'll drag along some of the other guys from that game too. Now that's fine. I still don't mind stacking up that game. Just try to get some leverage somewhere else. Yeah, but to your point, it makes Bears Lions attractive because it'll be much, much less popular.
Yeah, I think the leverage, kind of what we talked about, will be deciding on your running backs and deciding on your top 1, top 2 wide receivers. I think that's where you can get different. You just gotta obviously pick correctly when you're
Right.
guessing which of the 9K wide receivers you want, kind of a thing. So,
yep. I want to close off defense. I just felt like I should mention the 49ers. They've looked great last week. Chase Young's first game, the defense completely shut down Lawrence and the Jaguars. 5 sacks, 2 picks, 2 fumbles, held them to 3 points, and now they get a home matchup against Baker. So I would play them over the Commanders as well.
there you go. No faith in Baker Mayfield.
No, I like Baker, though. I think Baker's had a very good year. This is a tough spot.
Right. Yeah, at San Francisco, that is. Any other thoughts here in general in terms of matchups, in terms of the slate, in terms of a team you want to stack in tournaments?
Yeah, you could stack that 49ers Bucks game too. I don't know.
With Baker Mayfield quarterback.
Not with Baker. No, the Purdy stacks. Purdy I would probably pair him with McCaffrey and one of the pass catchers, but you could pair him with Debo and Kittle, or Ayuk and Kittle, and just it's an interesting stack because it will be low owned and there's leverage on the Buccaneers side that nobody's going to play Rashad White or Mike Evans, and they're decent options still. I don't know. Felt like it was worth mentioning.
Yeah, it feels like Debo.
Seattle, LA.
Yeah, I kind of like the Rams in that spot. I don't know if I go as far as. I mean, maybe if I'm playing Puka, if I'm playing Cup, I mean, we could see 2 100-yard receivers. Maybe you do play Stafford. I mean, he's been good this season, coming off injury. It seems like he's healthy, and he's not overly expensive. He's in that Goff price range, 6,400. So,
I mean, you're right. You could see that game 30-30. It could happen, right? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's not like the Seahawks are great defensively. I do have, I don't know, their offense has been a little weird this season. It's been a little off and on is what I'll say. But yeah, they had the 29-26 game against Washington. Been some lower scoring games. Earlier in the season, they had high scoring games against the Lions and Panthers. So we'll see if Geno Smith and Stafford can get into a back and forth kind of game. They did play earlier this season, but it was not back and forth. From what it was 30-13. Geno Smith did not show up in that one. All right. What you got anything else, Ryan?
No, Seahawks were favored in that game and they got crushed, but no, I don't have anything else. Tough slate. Pick your spots. It's one of those where there's no obvious spots. So you can sort of just pick the spots you like best and you're going to be okay in terms of ownership and leverage for the most part. And like, I like the slates, like I said at the start, where there's not too much obvious stuff or too much stuff that you feel like you're forced to do, especially for cash games when there's only like a couple pieces of obvious chalk and not like everyone on the exact same lineups. And, it matters which 2v2 you go with or which defense you go with, that stuff doesn't really matter this slate. Just, it's going to sound funny, but pick the guys that are going to score the most fantasy points and play them. Some weeks it's not like that though, because you have to play certain guys that are going to be chalk, even though you might not want to. They're going to be like 50-60% owned, and you might, it's not one of those weeks. So I like that.
Yeah, it's just really easy slate. You just got to pick the correct spots, and you're going to win money. It seems pretty easy.
Right, that's all you have to do.
I think we have it down. Fade this Brown Steelers game. All right, Ryan, you can find him at Ryan Belongia on Twitter. I am at Zdroik. Thank you for watching this. Please give a thumbs up on the YouTube video or leave a comment in the podcast feed if you're listening in podcast form. RotoWire.com/pod. That is a 48-hour trial to RotoWire. Also, RotoWire.com/chat to get into the Discord if you have any further NFL questions or any questions about any sport. We got channels for basically every sport in there. Ryan, thank you for the show. We'll see everyone back for Thanksgiving week. Maybe I believe Jack Burkhart may be stepping in the show, but I think we're gonna maybe we'll do a little recap of Thursday's slate, and then we'll jump in for the weekend action, and then everyone's bellies will be full and we'll be ready to win some money post Thanksgiving. Ryan, thank you again. See you everyone next week.
Thanks, Adam. Good luck, everybody.